Hello, in this video I want to show you how to make a break-even calculation and only using names. So we don't use cell references. We have a price, a variable cost, fixed cost and a quantity sold. And let's see what the profit is at this quantity, and we later on see what the profit is at other values for quantities. Well, let's first define the names. If I click on a cell C2, then you see the address here, and this field is called the name box, and we can change this cell address into a name. Let's type in price, enter, and what we can do then is that we can use this price name as a cell reference. Equals price. We see that there is also a function called price, but we want the label, the price. So if we select it, we can see that the cell C2 is selected, and if I press enter I make a reference to it and I get the value of 12.5. It's not formatted yet. There's another way of making names. I can select the range where the names are and the values, and then I click in the menu formulas, create from selection. I click on it and then I am asked, where are your names? My names are in the left column, so I click OK. Of course I check my result. If I click on quantity sold, the cell jumps to this cell C8 where my quantity sold is, and you see in the name that there is no space in, but there is an underscore. Excel made this underscore because it cannot accept empty spaces. Now let's see what happens, how many profit we have with these figures. Equals quantity sold. We just type in the Q, and then we can select if we find the name field. We multiply with the price minus the variable cost, and we still have to subtract the fixed cost. And with the cursor and the tab I can select all my cells. As you can see now, all the required cells are selected. I press enter and I see that my profit in this case is 300, not formatted. Now there's another way to do this. Let's select this whole range here where all our values and our calculations will be created. I select this whole range and again create from selection, and now my names are in the top row. I click OK. Now what I can do now is that there is an area quantity, not just one cell but the whole area, and the quantity is this area here. What I can do, for example, is equal sum and then quantity, and you see here that this is the quantity from all the products which are sold. Doesn't make sense to calculate this, but I just wanted to show you how you can make a formula for a whole range. Okay, but now the nice thing about names. What I can do, I can make a reference to the cell left of it and just type in quantity. Excel understands that I meant the quantity in cell B13. Let's see how this works. Equals quantity, and you see that the whole range is selected, but in the calculation later on you will see that only cell B13 is selected. I multiply this with the price and I press enter. Then I copy this formula down. Now in the 100 row you see here a quantity 100, a price of €12.50 makes 1250. And as you can see, the quantity is referring to the whole range, but in the calculation it only takes the row. And this is very nice. And what you also can see that I don't have to use dollar signs to fix the cells C2, etc. Now let's see how that works in the other formulas. Equals fixed cost, enter, copy down. The variable cost equals quantity multiplied with the variable cost. Tab, enter. The total cost I can refer to revenue minus this is not okay. The total cost equals total fixed plus total variable. Enter and copy down. And the profit equals revenue minus total cost. Enter. Copy this down. As you can see here, the break-even calculation is at a quantity of 160. Now I want to do this profit calculation a bit different. What I can also do is I can select a cell. If in this case I selected revenue minus total cost, I would have had the same result, but in this case there are cell references, and in the cell below you see the name. Now let's copy this upward and I get the names back. The result is the same. It's interesting to see that this functionality is not documented in the Microsoft. If I go to the help file of Microsoft, define and use names in Excel, then I cannot find it. I read a lot of books about it, and there also I couldn't find this functionality. There's lots of other information in it about the scope of a name. I will come back to that later, but not that you can refer to a single cell into a range. It is documented that you can refer to a whole range, but this is not where it's about. Before we are going to make a graph of it, let's first examine in the name managers what the values are for our names. We go to formulas in the menu and then the name manager. Control F3. Now, what do we see here? We see here, for example, the price, a current value of €12.50, and the reference to it. And we see that the scope is workbook. And in quantity, it is from cell B13 till B25. If you want to edit this, then we see that the scope is workbook. We cannot change this later on. The same way we made this for the price by selecting it and enter it here in the name field, but we also can't do this if we select, for example, quantity. In the quantity part I click on edit, and also there I cannot change it. Alright, we will come back to this settings later. Attention, remember that the range goes to C25, so this is C25 is the latest cell in the table. Now let's make a graph. It looks like a line graph, but we also always make an XI diagram. Click on Insert, Charts, we select all charts, and then a scatter chart, and then we select the line graph, the scatter line with straight lines. Click on it and press OK. We see a bunch of lines, and the best way to do this is to delete a few lines of them. We don't need total fixed, so we don't need this horizontal line. We don't need the profit. We don't need the variable cost, and what remains is the revenue and the total cost. And in the intersection the profit is 0, and we have to find out where this is. We know already here that it is in the value of 160. Let's change the chart title in break even. Alright, if we click on a line, we see in the formula bar the cell references. Now we don't want it. We said we would have used names. Now what happens if I select the data, click on revenue, click on edit, and I want to change the I values into revenue. Now let's see what happens. Again, I select it, I press equal F3. With F3 you get all the names, and in this case I want to add the revenue. I click on revenue, click OK, and then again OK. But this doesn't work. I get an error message. It's not possible to do this. Let's see if we can do this another way. Now let's see if we can change the cell references to a name. Let's select the revenue. The revenue the total cost. The total cost you see in column F, and in column B you see the quantity. Now let's put the cursor behind sheet 1 is blood. With the shift I select the range, and then I type in quantity. I press enter, and then you see something strange happens. The Excel accepts this, but it adds the name of my file to it, and it puts some quotes near to it. So it works, not 100% with the F3 that I can just add it, but you can make a reference to a name to it. Now, what happens if we are interested in the quantity of 300? Suppose I type in 300 here. That will not change anything to it. If I have these cells and copy this down, I will get a value. This doesn't work. So I undo this. But what if I want to be this graph to be flexible? Well, there is an option. I can make an Excel table of it. I click Insert and then Table. This is my data. It goes from B1 till G25. My table has headers, and I click on OK. It was already formatted, so I don't have extra formatting in it. Now, what happens when I type in now a value of 300, enter? You see that the cell functions immediately are updated, and you can also see that the graph is immediately updated, and it has all the formulas have the same function in between, and this is a very nice feature. So to recap, we saw how to make names, we saw how to make a graph, and we saw how to adjust the graph and the table by using Insert Table. Thank you very much.